They promised the UK a world-leading supercomputer, £750 million, cutting-edge AI, a global tech leap. But now, everything's changed. The announcement was bold. Britain would invest nearly $1 billion in building an Exascale Supercomputer, a system capable of performing a quintillion calculations per second. This wasn't just about keeping up with global rivals. It was about setting the pace, defining the next era of science, AI, and national security. But just months after this historic commitment, the UK government has made a dramatic U-turn. The dream of building a standalone British Exascale system is now off the table. Instead, the focus has shifted to international collaboration and scaled-down ambitions. Let's unpack the full story, because what happened here is more than just a budget decision. It's a window into how digital power is wielded, how scientific potential is shaped, and how geopolitics is quietly steering the future of computing. When the Exascale project was first introduced, it was framed as a cornerstone of British digital sovereignty. The government, through the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology (DSIT), envisioned a system that could unlock breakthroughs in medicine, climate science, energy modeling, and artificial intelligence. It was a response to the US and China's aggressive push into the same territory, where supercomputers like Frontier USA and Fugaku Japan are already reshaping global research. Exascale computing refers to systems that can handle 1 exaflop, that is, a billion calculations per second. To put this in perspective, these machines are millions of times more powerful than a typical laptop and thousands of times faster than even many enterprise-level servers. With this capability, a supercomputer could simulate the human brain in real time, model entire ecosystems down to the molecular level, and train next-generation AI models that go far beyond current limits. The technology is not just futuristic, it's foundational. But achieving this level of performance is staggeringly complex. It requires custom hardware, next-gen cooling systems, massive energy resources, and state-of-the-art software engineering. Countries that invest in exascale computing aren't just buying machines. They're building ecosystems that intertwine with research institutions, private sector innovation, and military infrastructure. This is why Britain's pivot is so significant. Initially, the UK government committed £750 million, signaling not only intent but urgency. The plan was to build the system on British soil, using domestic companies and fostering homegrown talent. Industry leaders like ARM and Graphcore anticipated involvement, and academic institutions prepared to align their research agendas. But by early 2025, signs of trouble emerged. The government issued a quiet revision of its strategy, emphasizing international collaboration and suggesting that building an entirely domestic exascale machine might not be the most efficient route. The language was subtle, but the implications were loud. Britain would no longer pursue a solo path to exascale. Instead, it would work with allies, potentially tapping into existing supercomputing infrastructure in Europe or the US. The funding, while still present, would be restructured. Some of it could go to shared platforms, some to smaller-scale infrastructure, and some to research grants. What disappeared was the national symbol of computational supremacy. The reasons? Multiple. First, financial strain. The UK's economic outlook remains uncertain, and with pressures on healthcare, energy, and defense, spending £750 million on a single project became harder to defend politically. Second, technical complexity. Building an exascale system from scratch is a feat that only a handful of nations have attempted, and it often requires multi-year timelines, global supply chains, and extreme specialization. Finally, geopolitical strategy. By partnering with the US or EU, Britain gains access to cutting-edge systems without bearing the full cost or risk. Still, the backlash has been swift. Critics argue that this is a retreat, a concession that undermines the UK's ambitions in AI and high-performance computing. Without independent infrastructure, they argue, Britain becomes a tenant in the digital house of others. It can't set the rules, can't secure its data autonomously, and can't train AI models that require vast computational resources. This raises concerns not just for science but for cybersecurity, innovation policy, and long-term economic resilience. There's also the issue of talent. Countries that build supercomputers often become magnets for top scientists, engineers, and researchers. They create feedback loops of innovation where hardware development supports software breakthroughs, which then attract new investment and ideas. Without a flagship project like the Exascale computer, the UK risks losing that edge. It might support research through grants or partnerships, but the gravitational pull of physical infrastructure will favor those who host it. And there are quiet whispers in the tech industry that this U-turn may open the door to increased foreign dependency. If British researchers are forced to rely on American or European systems for AI training, what happens to data sovereignty? What happens when those systems come with usage restrictions or political strings attached? In a world where digital infrastructure defines power, this isn't just an academic issue, it's a strategic one. Of course, proponents of the new strategy argue that collaboration isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Why duplicate resources, they say, when global partnerships can achieve more at less cost? They point to successful alliances in aerospace, climate research, and biotechnology. And they're not wrong. International science can thrive on cooperation. But there's a difference between partnering from a position of strength and relying from a position of need. Critics worrying that this shift feels more like the latter. So, what happens next? The UK will likely invest in hybrid models, part domestic infrastructure, part international access. It may pour funds into optimizing AI models for smaller compute footprints or support novel architectures like quantum-inspired computing, but it will no longer have a flagship exascale machine to call its own. In many ways, this story is a microcosm of larger trends. Around the world, the race for digital supremacy is intensifying. Nations are competing not just in AI development, but in the hardware ecosystems that enable it. Supercomputers, 6G, quantum chips, these are the arenas where the next decade will be defined. And the UK's decision sends a signal. We may not be ready to lead that race on our own. Whether this is a prudent recalibration or a missed opportunity is still up for debate. But one thing is clear, the future of computing is a battlefield, and the nations that build it will shape the trajectory of human knowledge for generations to come. If this surprised you, imagine what else they're not telling us. Subscribe to Atomic Domain for more deep dives into science and tech secrets. Like, share, and comment to join the discussion because the future isn't waiting.